Good afternoon to all of you. A warm welcome to our debate on the Internet Governance Forum 2020 Key Takeaways. As you may know, the 15th annual meeting of the IGF was supposed to take place in Poland last year, but was eventually hosted online due to the pandemic, under the theme of Internet for Human Resilience and Solidarity. Today's debate is hosted by our member Lina Gálvez Muñoz, MEP, with the S&D Group from Spain and Vice Chair of the ITRE Committee of the European Parliament. In addition to her commitment, she is a member of the Delegation for Relations with the United States, and she was appointed head of the European Parliament delegation to the IGF in 2019, so last time that it took place physically. Welcome, Lina. Thank you very much for taking the lead on this debate. And then I would like to introduce also our other guest speakers, and two more will join us this afternoon. But let's start first with a warm welcome to Mattia Fantinati, member of the House of Representatives of the Italian Parliament and newly elected MAG member. And then we also have, as you can see, Lise Fuhr, Director General at ETNO. Welcome, Lise, and Esteve Sanz, Head of Sector, Internet Governance and Multi-stakeholder Dialogue at DG CNECT of the European Commission. And then we will be also joined very shortly by Giovanni Seppia, External Relations Manager at EURID, and by Sandra Hoferichter, Secretary General of EuroDIG, the European Dialogue of Internet Governance. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll try our best to catch up the time. But first of all, over to you, Lina. So MEP Gálvez Muñoz, please.
So thank you very much for being here. I'm very glad to host this event of the Internet Global Forum. As you know, as framework of the United Nations for multi-stakeholder dialogue, digital public policy issues. As you said, as you know, this edition was last November. It was the 15th meeting, and everything that happened last year, including the meeting, was exceptional. For the first time, it was fully online. In 2019, that was the last year that it took place physically. Maria Rosa said, the honor to lead the European Parliament delegation, where we have the chance really to meet with many people, and it was really a very nice event. We were looking forward for this year, but it was not possible. Even if this topic, Internet for Human Resilience and Solidarity, it is very important, and also dealing with four main topics: data, environment, passion, and trust. That there are topics we are dealing with at the European Parliament, different files, in different commissions. In addition, it was also an important part in the topic of global digital cooperation, which is another topic we are working with at the Parliament. But this year or last year, 2020 edition was not only different because it was online, because of the topic and all that, also because this year we could see how important is Internet for our life, especially after the lockdown. It has become extremely important to access Internet for our professional life, for our education, but also for our social relations and our personal life. So guaranteed access to Internet to everyone became a very basic and essential topic. Also, last year, 2020, Secretary General roadmap for digital was released, which recommends the strengthening of IGF, which I'm very happy, via the IGF model. Another important issue of this last edition was environmental issues. The first time, a very particular and important topic in the discussion, which is very important having in mind the 2030 goals and the Green Deal objectives in the European Union, and also the high energy consumption, I will say, of all the digital sector. There was also a part dedicated to the high-level leaders, in which leaders from all stakeholders groups discussed the role of internet and digital technology can play in the impact of emergencies such as the COVID-19, but also economy, health, and security. It was also the first year ever a youth summit was held, so the young generation is integrating in the IGF program, which I think was a very important step. And they discussed relevant issues such as access to internet as a necessary condition for human development, especially in this time during this pandemic, and probably will come after. Also, the digital divide, the side effect of the digital transformation, especially due to the pandemic, and the need for people to direct and shape digitalization and to achieve digital inclusion for vulnerable groups. In addition, encouraged by the success of the IGF 2019 parliamentary roundtable, another parliamentary roundtable was organized this time focused on the building trust in a time of COVID-19 response and post-COVID-19 recovery. Members of parliaments from around the world came together to discuss ways to build trust during and beyond the COVID-19 crisis. Among those members of parliament was Mattia Fantini, who is here with us. So I leave to Mattia to talk about that part. Finally, the IGF got recommendations and suggestions for the way forward from the different sessions under the four topics mentioned. I mentioned at the very beginning: data, environment, inclusion, and trust, which are available at the official IGF website, and which I recommend very much to all of you to take a look, as they are very good ideas included there, recommendations that we should follow or take into consideration for our next steps. As a way to conclude, let me say that it is clear that the work of the IGF as a forum for open discussion on how should the governance of the internet be in our world was already very relevant. But the pandemic has accelerated the importance and urgency of the work done in the forum. So I hope we will keep working. We will strengthen that forum because it's really international, and we really need to share the experience in order to find the best solutions for a common future in which everybody is included. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for your work on this area. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lina, for being with us and for taking the lead again on these topics, and for setting the scene so well and reminding everybody of the key subject areas that IGF 2020 touched upon, and also of the importance that was allocated to the participation of parliamentarians, particularly in this last edition, but in previous ones as well. So speaking of which, Mattia Fantinati, the floor is yours, please. We thank you very much. By the way, Mattia, we know you're very busy in Italy. Today it's a very turbulent day with the crisis of the government and the new government being put together. So we appreciate you being here. We know that you have to leave us shortly. So without further ado, the floor is yours. I'm afraid I cannot hear you again, so you may. Okay, now you can.
My time is running out, so I don't want to waste it. Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Maria, and thank you very much, Lina Gálvez and European Internet Forum for the invitation, and thank you for discussing about these topics, because we are in a very important period due to the COVID-19 outbreak that changed our lives and means forever. But there is another part of my there is another phase of the medal, that without internet no country could have survived to the pandemic COVID-19. So what we are going to discuss, I think this what we have to discuss, and all the world all together should do it, is about the digital cooperation. That's why IGF, that's why the parliamentarian track, and how to include as many stakeholders as much. This is what we are going to do. So if we have considered this kind of a particular period, there is the commemoration of the 75th anniversary of the United Nations that took virtually. And there was an issue of a roadmap of digital cooperation by the Secretary General of the United Nations, and for the table high-level panel of digital cooperation. And it's among of this table, there is a recommendation of 5A and B that talk about that it speaks about the IGF and the future structure of the IGF. This is an option paper that we are going to discuss even in the MAG and even at the high level of the IGF. And then I could say proudly that the G20 now that is gone, that is taken in Italy, is about the digital divide. So we have to grow up about the internet issues, and we have to cooperate all together to find out a standard of the internet governance. And it's not difficult. I think that before talking about the parliamentarians, I would like to have a very short brief about the future of the IGF and what we are going to do. And I'm a MAB member, is the agency that coordinated the IGF. I can say that we are discussing about the hybrid version of the IGF, because I'm really confident that all the meetings that we are going to do in the next future will be hybrid. So it means that there are pros and cons. It's pros that is hybrid. It means that every meeting could be as more inclusive as possible. So if I want to be involved in a meeting, I can just use my computer and not going there, not to travel around the world. The problem is the content that is face-to-face is better, and the networking that you do aside of the meeting is important as well as the meeting, and so this is networking is important. So I think that the vision about the future, it will be hybrid. So we have to discuss about all the consequences that it takes for the hybrid meeting. So inclusivity, connectivity, virtual identity, and cybersecurity, and so on. And this is what we're going to do. IGF need a more strengthened and mean a more strategy. That's why the operation paper suggests to create an IGF plus, so we can develop the IGF, because my issues is not to discuss for the IGF forum, the event that it takes every year, but I would like to IGF lives in every day and all around here. So just the forum is just the final event that describes what we have done in the year. So a stakeholder involved all during the year with the annual program, with a sort of more good communication, involving, of course, involving younger people. That's just focus on the parliamentarians. IGF, as you support in 2005 in the Tunisia agenda, needs a stakeholder, because internet is not something about the government, it's something that involves all of us. So companies, institution, government, parliamentarians, university, academia, and companies, and citizens as well. It's something that is all of us. the parliamentarian was involved since the Athens in 26 at the first IGF, in particular in the European Parliament. But the parliamentarian as seen as a government issue. No, the parliamentarian not the government issue, is something more. The parliamentarian can speak for the government if they are in majority, but the parliamentarian can address the government, can making law, can writing law, can drum up the people, can make the people more awareness about the digitalization topics, about the cybersecurity, about the threat of the artificial intelligence and the benefits of artificial intelligence as well. So I am perfectly confident that I am a parliamentarian. If I have to write a law, maybe it took a lot of years, but I think that if I have to make a motion, if to if I have to make the people awareness, it's easier. I need a short time, and maybe my effect about the digitalization, it could be better than a law. That's what I think that parliamentarian is very important, like a stakeholder group that must be taken in the next IGF. I think it's fundamental, this aspect. Jimmy should that unfortunately passed away, but he created a round table in the IGF in Berlin. There was a very important group of parliamentarians in Katowice, in the virtual Katowice, and I'm really confident that we'll be in the next Katowice in Poland for the 2021 IGF, and I really hope in person. So we have to create a round table because we want to, in a sort of way, speaking about a multi-stakeholder approach with the parliamentarian. I am a parliamentarian member. Sometimes it's difficult to find out who are the members of the other parliamentarians council that take about digitalization. So I think it's a great effort that we have to do. It's a great work, and I really need all the help that anyone can give me. And I would like that this group have a really important relevance, and it will be formal, because I would like to involve any country of the world, any parliamentarians, to talk about this sort of specifics. I think that is our further development and what we are going to do. So thank you very much for the European Parliament. They begin a marvelous work, and I really hope that we'll be asked for a long time. So thank you very much, Lina, and parliamentarian as important, and is a real innovation that the EGF Plus must take in that. Thank you very much. I really do my apologies. If you have any question, I leave in the chat my email address, so you can type me. You can write me anytime. No, I can't. Oh yes, I could. Yeah.
Thank you, Mattia, very much for joining us today, despite the turbulent times.
No, sorry. I miss you.
It's all right. We will share it. Thanks for suggesting. Absolutely. No worries about that. And very clear messages from you, and especially from a point of view of parliamentarian who's so involved now in the works of the IGF. So you said that, of course, our present is digital, but so is our future, apparently, at least to a certain extent. So I would like to bring in Lise Fuhr, with ETNO, who has been at the IGF several times. Over to you, Lise.
Oh, thank you, Maria Rosa, and thank you to MEP Lina Gálvez for inviting ETNO. As all of you know, ETNO is very fond of IGF, and we're certainly no stranger to the IGF. We have been deeply involved for many years in this annual forum, and we think it's important to share the perspectives of the European telcos, but also to learn about and contribute to the most pertinent debates of the day in internet governance. And in 2020, I was very honored to speak on the high-level panel on the future of exactly internet governance, highlighting exactly the importance of having all the relevant stakeholders present and having all the voices heard. This is what IGF can do. This is especially important when it comes to the participation and also engagement of the parliamentarians, of which the European Parliament is always very well represented at IGF. And I think IGF is not only an opportunity for stakeholders to make their voices heard, but also for decision makers like parliamentarians to go back home and make that change happen. And that's a bit like Mattias was talking about. It needs to be every day that we work with this. So ETNO co-organized 2 workshops this year. One of them was on socially responsible data uses in time of crisis. That was co-organized with ICC. But we were also delighted to partner with several organizations to plan a workshop looking at the role of digital technologies in environmental sustainability. So we worked with Swiss Ofcom, GC, the European Commission, and Diplo Foundation to ensure that we actually had a session that was rich and diverse on the perspective on this issue. And we think the telecom sector is uniquely equipped to make a profound and lasting impact on solving one of the biggest challenges of today, which is climate crisis. So digitalization and connectivity, they are the key instrument for dealing with the most pressing environmental challenges affecting society at large. For instance, climate change, we look at water shortage, circular economy, etc. And my colleague, Sarah Ghazanfari, presented the crucial role which telcos play as an enabler for greening our society and economy and how our members are contributing to reach this goal. And firstly, we highlighted once more that ETNO has strongly welcomed the European Commission strategy to advance on the European Green Deal. We think this has the potential to make Europe the global leader on the fight against climate change. And we think digital solutions are critical in achieving the EU Green Deal sustainability goals. Also, telcos in Europe right now, as we speak, are rolling out next generation connectivity, which is 5G and fiber. And we have all invested and continue to invest heavily in the build out of an upgrade of energy efficient and high-speed network infrastructures and data centers. So if we look at the numbers in 2019, ETNO companies deployed 60.9% of the total network investment in Europe. That is a huge number, 36.6 billion euros, which is a 6.3 growth compared to 2018. So the ETNO members are truly enablers of the EU Green Deal with our networks and our services at the heart of the digital transformation. And we think it's through digitalization that we help other industries like manufacturing, healthcare, public administration, transports, and they can become more productive, more modern, and greener. So we think telcos can help other sectors to actually decarbonize. And the services, the new services that we deliver are more energy efficient themselves. But during the IGF discussion last year, an important point was raised of rebound effects. So while we accelerate digitalization and new technologies enable more efficient and environmental friendly ways of living and working, there is also a concern that the gains in efficiency can actually encourage greater uptake than ever, which we actually think is a good idea, but that could mean that we offset that progress by making a net increase in our emissions. But we think the added value for reaching climate and sustainability targets through digitalization and the digital enabling potential over other sectors will outweigh this rebound effects by far. So we think there is a greening and important potential in digitalization. Last, I'll say the ETNO members have taken very decisive and continuous actions to actually cut carbon emissions and increase energy efficiency in our own networks. So I just want to give you a few examples and then hand over to you, Maria Rosa. But we see many telcos are committed to climate neutrality targets. We see Telia Company and TDC and other ETNO members, Deutsche Telekom, British Telecom, Swisscom, Telefonica, and others are committed to using 100% renewable energy. And new mobile high-speed networks, and particular 5G technology, they are actually designed not only to increase network performance, but also to deliver increased energy efficiency. And our deployment of fiber networks is also expected to deliver increased efficiency in terms of energy consumptions. So we see a lot of ETNO members are pioneering also on green financial aspects and signing up for green bonds. And again, we look at Telefonica and Telia companies. And all these were the discussions we discussed during our event in IGF. And I think it's important to have those dialogues in order to kind of get the fears out and discuss them and see what are the pros and what are the cons on digitalization of society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lise, for touching upon one of the big highlights of last year's IGF, and not just of that, of course, so the sustainability and the greening of the digital infrastructure development. So we'll hear more about it. I think I'd like, also mindful of the time, to give immediately the floor to Esteve Sanz with the European Commission.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Perfectly well, thank you.
Okay. So yes, thank you so much for the invitation of the European Internet Forum and of MEP Lina Gálvez. It is really a pleasure for me to be here to discuss some of the important topics that are now being hotly discussed all over the place. I was asked to discuss a little bit the broader theme of the digital cooperation strategy via the roadmap of the UN and this evolution of the IGF into the IGF plus. But please let me start by repeating something that you've heard before from the Commission, but we never get tired of repeating. The European Commission and the European Union in general are fully, totally committed to the multi-stakeholder model of internet and technology governance. This is a model that, when working properly, it delivers very good, highly legitimate, and extremely innovative policies that benefit the global public interest. And it is precisely because of this very strong commitment over time that we are particularly attentive to two things. One is the defense of the model in relation to alternative visions that would put the internet under the control of states and state-based organizations. And second, the evolution of the model, the progression of the model, so that it becomes more effective and more inclusive, thus avoiding being captured by just one group of stakeholders that might get to know the game particularly well. Now, 2020 has really given us the opportunity to work very intensively on both angles, as we are indeed in a real threshold moment. We're in a liminal stage where the architecture of the internet governance will be redefined. We have a roadmap for digital cooperation, and we are very happy with this roadmap in general, and also in particular to what concerns recommendations 5A and 5B, which, as you know, talk about the architecture of internet governance and the IGF+. We would like a more strategic, more focused, more ambitious IGF, and this is precisely the IGF+ that is promised in these documents. But we are now slowly entering into a new phase. We're entering into the implementation mode where concrete ideas are being discussed and concrete institutions are being shaped. And as you all well know, this phase is almost as important as the conceptual phase, perhaps even more. We are participating in the reflection within the MAC, and this is generating very good ideas. But there are things that go a bit beyond what's being discussed in the MAC. I know that Sandra will be discussing also this topic, and she might enter into other issues. But here today, I would like to discuss basically two things with you, to present our ideas on two things. One, on the creation of a tech envoy within the UN system. And the second one, the creation of the potential creation of a high-level body within the IGF system. So I will briefly discuss these two issues with you. On the tech envoy, we think, the Commission thinks, and I would say the European Union thinks, that this institution is going to be very important, not only because it is going to be in charge of implementing the roadmap, the digital cooperation roadmap, but because a huge challenge for the institution is to really grasp the core principles of the multi-stakeholder model and empower it with all what the UN system can bring into it. The tech envoy's success is based and will be based on its capacity to enable global multi-stakeholder networks. And this is not exactly a traditional UN envoy. It's probably much more complex. So we, the European Commission, the European Union External Action Service, member states, we are all closely coordinating to make sure that the institution is shaped towards the right direction. We have very clear ideas about how the mandate of the tech envoy should be shaped. Just to give you an example, in its role as implementer of the digital cooperation roadmap, the tech envoy, we think, should really work hard in finding the interconnections between the different actions. On the one hand, it was interesting that ensuring the protection of human rights in the digital era was singled out as one of the core actions of the digital cooperation roadmap. But of course, the protection of human rights and of the free and open internet needs to be taken into account when we think about connectivity, when we think about inclusion, when we think about digital public goods, when we think about artificial intelligence, when we think about trust and security, etc. And this is especially the case in the context of developing countries. Now, in 2021, the EU will not only support the institution of the tech envoy and the roadmap for digital cooperation of the UN. The EU will also display a high level, I would say a new level of ambition for the digital transformation in the external relations and cooperation programs, and put it on par with, indeed, the green ambition. That's why we call it the twin priorities of the Commission. Now, on the second topic I want to discuss with you, this creation of a high-level body. As you probably know, the roadmap suggests that a new high-level body should be integrated within the IGF system. As with all the other recommendations, we welcome this one, as we think it can truly contribute to the relevance and visibility of the IGF+. Yet, we think here again that the mandate and the institutional position of the high-level body should be carefully crafted so that it truly fits the bottom-up multi-stakeholder model. Rather than taking the spotlight, the high-level body could be in charge of bringing to the IGF table the big internet governance decision makers to openly and democratically discuss their policies with the global multi-stakeholder community. And here we're, of course, thinking about big states, North, South, East, and West, big regions such as the EU, but also companies, big companies who take local decisions about the internet, but that nonetheless have a global impact. We think that this should be at the core of the new ambitious IGF+. These are changes that will be decided probably at the level of the UNSG already, though there is a need to start improving the IGF and the multi-stakeholder dialogue as we go, right now, not waiting for the final conclusion of the UN Secretary General. This has been done already in the last 4 years. We have not only the parliamentarian track, which we think is extremely important, but also the IGF messages, the high-level leader tracks. We have a more strategic agenda now. We have extremely important angles related to sustainability, as we just heard. But we should continue doing it in the preparation of IGF 2021 in Poland. The European Commission will play its role as a member of the MEC and as a key funder of the IGF. And we, of course, welcome the engagement and support of all European stakeholders and MEPs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Esteve, for touching upon many interesting initiatives like the Tech Envoy and giving us a little bit of a glimpse at what will the IGF Plus will be and many other things, but we'll discuss further also during the Q&A session. I see that there's already a question for you, actually, but so we'll go there later. Now I'd like to bring in Giovanni Seppia with EURID, and then Giovanni will be followed by Sandra Hofericht with Eurodic. Over to you, Giovanni.
Thank you, Maria Rosa.
Yes.
Can you hear me well? Yes, good. So first of all, I thank you for this opportunity. Also, thank you, our hosting MP. Thank you so much. We have been speaking so far as much as I was able to follow at very high level about the IGF. I'm going to speak at a very specific area of the IGF, which is the Dynamic Coalition on Data and Trust that EURID launched in 2020. And we searched through the list of dynamic coalitions that are available on the IGF website. And what we found is that there was a lack of a dynamic coalition on data and trust. And so we wanted to create a dynamic coalition on data and trust to encourage proactive intervention and also effective industry self-regulation to raise standards of data quality and especially combat poor data and disinformation, as well as raise levels of public trust in the internet, which it is true that 2020 was a special year, but we believe that, and what we have witnessed is that, the reputation of the internet has experienced some ups and downs throughout 2020. And above all, we wanted to have a truly dynamic coalition, so not something that meets only once a year during the IGF, but a dynamic coalition that meets regularly over the year. And we are currently planning the work of the coalition in 2021, and we plan to have at least 3 meetings, virtual meetings of the coalition before the meeting in conjunction with the yearly IGF. What we have seen in recent year is that there have been many disinformation campaigns and scandals that have somehow diminished the confidence of the regulators and members of the public in the effectiveness of the industry self-regulation. In 2020, when we launched the Dynamic Coalition, we wanted to be very specific, and therefore the initial focus of the group was to explore issues of data and trust through the lens of industry responses to the COVID-19 pandemic. And that included self-regulatory actions by registries like EURID, those managers of top-level domains, in our case is .eu, then there is like Nominate for .uk, AFNIC for .fr, and many others. And also registrars that are the providers through which domain names are usually registered. And those include big providers like GoDaddy, 1&1, 1.com, but also local small and medium providers. So we wanted really to have a very specific and concrete, let's say, focus on the actions about data and trust around the COVID-19 pandemic. I must say that during the inaugural meeting of the IGF Data and Trust Dynamic Coalition, we witnessed an incredibly high number of interested parties who followed the inaugural session. And there were a number of takeaways out of the session. First of all, there's been a very high number of registries and registrars that have been actively working to limit the spread of misinformation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Many registries and registrars reported also that the quantity of new domain names registered during the pandemic and that create a risk of a harm by spreading misinformation was quite minimal compared to the, let's say, news items that we may have read. So this is quite important that, again, there was this high number of fake news about the domain names, the DNS industry responsibilities within the pandemic. There is also a need for reliable information to be shared between various operators regarding DNS abuse, because again, there is a high level of misinformation about DNS abuse and what registries and registrars could do to help in this sense. Partnership between tech companies and public institutions is crucial and will remain crucial in the future to combat any kind of misinformation. And also the fact that there is already a EU code of practice on disinformation, which has led to tangible progress in the major platforms, but at the same time, it should be spread not only across Europe, but also at international level. So in a nutshell, and conscious of the fact that we started a bit late, I'd like to sum up and say that it was and it is a very interesting dynamic coalition on data and trust. We will have a work plan. It's an open data and trust dynamic coalition, so anybody can join. We are planning the very first meeting in Q1, so we plan to have it in March. And again, we will focus on data, and in the term of data is to be understood in its widest sense. So it doesn't include only domain name, because URID is manager of the .eu top-level domain, but includes also content-related issues such as disinformation or artificial intelligence-enabled profiling. So it's really a dynamic coalition that wants to open to broad talks about the importance of relying on sound information and how sensitive it could be to spread misinformation across the different networks. I'm open to question, and I will share my email address, and anybody can join the dynamic coalition, and I will add the interest people I may receive their data to the dynamic coalition distribution list. Thank you again, Maria Rosa, and thank you to our hosting MP.
Thank you very much, Giovanni, for bringing us up to speed with the works of the new Dynamic Coalition. Without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to Sandra Hoferichter. Sandra, over to you. Last but not least.
Thank you very much, Maria, and kudos how you manage these difficult issues with the technicalities. Technique is great unless it doesn't work, and you managed really in a very calm way. I can't really cope how stressful that must have been for you to manage all this. So well done. Also, thank you for keeping the tradition of having a discussion on the IGF, and in this respect on the debriefing of the IGF. It was again my great pleasure to be part of this coordinating team and help you to put the session together. So everyone, if you haven't yet, after this intervention, you must be aware of the UN process on digital cooperation and the roadmap that was published in June last year, and that is based on the report of the UN panel under the leadership of Secretary General Guterres. I believe the year of the pandemic has made it very clear why digital cooperation is needed and why we need a forum for open exchange to discuss how we would like to shape our digital environment. The report suggests various digital architecture models, inter alia the so-called IGF Plus model, which found in the discourse of the recent months the broadest support across the globe and across all stakeholder groups. When planning this event today, we aim to highlight some of the key takeaways of this year's IGF that are in particular related to the recommendation of the UN roadmap and have been further discussed in the IGF strategy working group. Towards an IGF Plus model, this working group detected key areas of improvement. They are inclusiveness, strategy, impact, and sustainability. On the point of inclusiveness, the strengthening of participation and diversity in the entire IGF process is an ongoing task, and the successful involvement of parliamentarians is just one important example. Mattia underlined already why parliamentarians are a critical group. Other areas of improvement are needed to increase participation, such as participation from the global south, in particular from least developed countries and small island developing states, governments, the business sector, and of course the youth. But in terms of youth, I think the IGF is doing pretty well. With regard to the strategy, the working group proposes a multi-year planning, both in terms of financial sustainability, but also concerning a more focused agenda. But also communication on the outcomes is an important area of improvement, and the strategy needs to be worked out there. As well as the interconnection between the various initiatives and intersessional work streams that have emerged under the IGF. Just to name some of them: national, regional IGF, of which Eurodic is one, best practice forums, or dynamic coalitions. On the question of how to make the IGF more impactful, the working group suggests to adopt a more consistent issue-driven approach to the IGF program development. Strengthen, develop and integrate the IGF intersessional activities. Consolidate the integration of national legislator through the parliamentarian track. Consolidate liaisons with decision-making bodies, and strengthens communication on the outcomes. To work towards a more sustainable urgent fundraising strategy and efforts are needed. Many proposals that I just shared can only be implemented if additional resources are secured. If you would like to read more on this strategy, I put the link to this working group here in the chat, and you will find more details about the work of the strategy group there. So to sum up our debate today and the key takeaways from the IGF and how invited speakers relate to the development of the IGF Plus model. Giovanni Seppia was just introducing the formation of a new dynamic coalition on data and trust. And this is driven by key internet service providers like the .eu registry Eurit. Esteve Sanz underlined the two new important elements in the sphere of digital cooperation, namely the tech envoy and the establishment of a high-level body. Mattia is the first ever parliamentarian who joined the IGF MAG, the multi-advisory group. And in this position, I'm sure he will help to develop the parliamentarian track within the IGF. Lise Fuhr from ETNO explained why telecom operators are constant contributors to the discussion about the environmental sustainability, which will be, by the way, one focus area of the next IGF cycle, including the Eurodic cycle. And why this topic is not only focused on the IGF, but also the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, is promoting a Green Deal. I strongly believe that digitization and sustainable environment development complement one another. And we have to be successful if we take a holistic approach. How to take such a holistic approach can be discussed already tomorrow, because EuroDIC, the European IGF, will conduct a public planning meeting. And if you find time, you are invited to help shaping this year's EuroDIC agenda. And I share another link in the chat with you that leads you direct to the registration to that meeting tomorrow. It's a full day meeting and you can join at any time. We would be happy to welcome you there. And with this, I end my little intervention, and thanks again for inviting me.